And there we are. Good morning, everybody. We're ready to get started. And if I can find my screen to share, we're going to get started with a song that you know. I wonder if you guys have done this one yet this week. Here we go. Can you hear it? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear it.
This train is bound for glory. This train.
Don't just sit there. You gotta move.
This train is bound for glory. This train.
Come on.
This train is bound for glory. Jesus made a place in heaven for me. This train is bound for glory. This train. This train is bound for glory. This train.
Come on, let's see it. Move it.
This train is bound for glory. This train. This train is bound for glory. Jesus made a place in heaven for me. This train is bound for glory. This train.
Okay, now let's bring it down.
This train is bound for glory. This train. This train is bound for glory. This train. This train is bound for glory. Jesus made a place in heaven for me. This train is bound for glory. This train. Oh, this train.
Put your hands together.
This train is bound for glory. This train. This train is bound for glory. This train. This train is bound for glory. Jesus made a place in heaven for me. This train is bound for glory. This train. This train. This train. This train.
Woo, isn't that fun? Woohoo! All right. Well done, everybody. Uh-oh, we're going to the next one. I got to stop it. Stop it. Stop it. There we are.
It's okay.
And I'll get back to you guys. Where'd you go? You're hiding. There you are. You're all there. All right, so I got a question for you. I got several questions throughout the morning, and then we're going to look at Bible passages after each question. We may not all be able to share every question, but let's see how many we can go through. So short answers to each of the questions. Here's the first one. As a kid, what were meal times like in your family? As a kid, what were meal times like in your family? Let's see, who's first? Christy, you're not muted. Go. What were meal times like when you were a kid?
We always sat around the table. My dad was full of fun. There was a blessing was said always in the beginning, and we were all together.
Excellent. All right. Kathy, how about you?
We also sat around the table together. Blessing. My dad traveled a lot, so a lot of times it was just my mom and brother and I, but if he was there, he was a practical joker and just kept it fun.
Oh, cool. Elizabeth, how about you? What were meal times like in your family?
In my family, we did all sit around the table, and yeah, we had blessing. It was really a time for a lot of conversation. So even after we finished dinner, we would continue talking a little bit, just about things that were going on for the day. But we were really fortunate. My dad was always home like by 5:30, so we always had all meals together.
Wow, that explains your thoughtful nature. It started as a child, right? Your parents got you going, thinking and talking. That's great. Lydia, hi. How are you? Good to see you. What were meal times like?
We always sat at the table together. My dad asked the blessing each meal. And one thing I remember was you better taste everything that was on the table.
Uh-oh.
That was a rule. You didn't have to eat a lot of it, but you better taste it.
Yep, that's cool. Xenia, how about you?
She's muted.
Yep. Oh,
A lot of fun.
it was a lot of fun. Huh? What made it fun?
Everybody joking and playing.
Do you have a big family?
Yes.
So it was a lot of people, a lot of fun, a lot of laughter, good memories, huh?
Hmm.
I can see it. You're smiling as you think about it. That's cool. David, how about you?
Oh, I guess much like most of the others, mealtimes were a regular time. My dad kept pretty reasonable hours, so you could plan a meal time, and certainly a time of sharing. And in the Missouri church, you had the "Come Lord Jesus" prayer was the standard of the day. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Evelyn, how about you?
Well, it was the three of us, my mom, dad, and I, and we ate together every night. My mother worked, so our meals were simple. The most common meal was broiled hamburger and boiled potatoes and a small salad and green peas. I mean, we ate that quite a bit, and I mean, everything was just boiled and things that could be made quickly. And we in fact, the chair that I have is right about 5 feet away from me right now. We each had our own chair because it wasn't really a set. You know, mine was a cane chair, and each chair was not the same. But we always ate together. Yeah.
So are you sick of that meal, or does it bring comfort? Do you ever make it
Oh
anymore
no, I'm
with all
not
the?
sick of it. I still do it. I don't boil potatoes that much. Sometimes I like just to cut them in pieces and put them in the oven,
Mhm.
or have baked potato or
Mhm.
mashed potatoes. My husband is more a rice person,
Mhm.
and when I was growing up, we never had rice.
Yeah.
So, we don't have as much potatoes now.
All right. So there's the poll. Raise your hand. How many were more potato families growing up? How many were more rice families growing up? All right.
Tenny.
Elizabeth, which hand did you raise?
We were mostly potatoes growing up.
Mostly potatoes. Yeah. Somebody called my name. I didn't see who.
I did. It was Lydia.
Yes,
So,
Lydia.
I was going to say that we grew almost all of our food, and so we grew potatoes. So we have potatoes a lot. We obviously didn't grow rice because we lived in mid North Carolina, but we had rice on Sunday. Rice and gravy was Sunday. Every
That was
time.
a special
It was
day.
special.
Yeah.
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah.
We
We were
had-
too.
We had
Go ahead.
rice, but if it was left over, we got it the next morning for breakfast with syrup on it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. You didn't waste it. Didn't waste it. No, just dressed it up a little bit. Yeah. Well, our meal times were more just functional. It was a necessity. Okay, you came in, you ate, you went back out and worked. Mom and Dad grew up in the Depression era, and meals were simply a necessity. And we didn't sit around and really talk. We did have fun and laugh and things, but I just remember them being, okay, hurry up, lunchtime, go in and eat. We'd go back on work. Mom would do the dishes and start preparing for dinner, whatever the next meal was. But we were there. Let's take a look at a lesson. This is a setup, as you could imagine, to, let me see, where to go here. It is. And share that on our screen. There we go. And click here and slide it down. This is a tee up to the Last Supper. Can you see that? Somebody want to read? We're at Matthew 26. We're going to walk through from the Last Supper to the resurrection in 45 minutes. Let's see if we can do this. Somebody want to read this? Matthew 26, right here. Who's got it? Thanks, David. Or was that Ed?
That was
Okay.
Ed.
Go ahead, either.
All right, okay. And while they were eating, he said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me." They were very sad and began to say to him one after the other, "Surely you don't mean me, Lord." Jesus replied, the one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me.
So they were all sitting down together. They were all there at that Last Supper, as we now know it and as we call it, this Lord's Supper. And Jesus says, the one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. Well, I wonder what they all thought about it, because they were all sitting there. They were all together. And what were they doing? They were all dipping their hands in the bowl, right? Wonder what that says about us. Wonder what that makes us think, because, we're, all the time when we talk about Bible stories, the stories in the Bible, the stories of them and of God are also our stories, right? We go all the way back and we realize that their stories are our stories. We're intertwined. The people in the Bible are us. We are the people in the Bible, and we do the same thing. Jesus says, the one who dipped their hand in the bowl with me will betray me. And every Sunday, don't we do that same thing? Even as we receive the body and blood of Jesus Christ, whether we're now at home or gathered together again someday, we take our wafer, we take that bread, and we dip it in the bowl. And aren't we the same? Aren't we the ones who betray Jesus? We're just as guilty as Judas, aren't we? Remember what all the rest of the disciples did during that time too. I mean, they weren't hanging on and they weren't right there saying, yeah, Jesus, and they weren't in the crowd arguing against Pilate and against all the other leaders. They were running away in fear. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But we're kind of all in the same boat.
Question.
What varies? Go ahead.
Question. I was wondering if dipping the hands into a bowl meant eating together, or was it, and I see you interpret it as communion.
Well, it was eating together, but we're doing that during communion. Is what I'm doing is bridging that. We're doing the same thing. So we are eating every time we gather together. We are eating the body and blood of Jesus Christ, and we are united. We are together, and we are dipping our hands in the bowl of Jesus Christ and sharing it with him, he with us, just as the disciples did that night. So there's blessings in receiving that, but at the same time, we're just like Judas, just like the other disciples who are fearful, who sometimes don't stand up and profess our faith openly, who deny Jesus. There's a connection. What very sincere promise did you make but failed to deliver on? Have you ever made absolutely, I'm so sincere, I have made this promise, but I've failed to deliver on it? Can you think of a time? Anybody have one?
I guess I don't think of them necessarily as I'm trying to think of when you say the sincere, I think when you add the word to that, maybe it makes the examples a little bit harder. I think about, times when a sincere promise to me is when you're in a contract almost. So, I think I've done a pretty good job living up to those, but the promises that I've not lived up to, sadly, I think are the ones that you will make to family. And when you talk about dinner as an example, in my life, sadly, unlike my father, who was very regular about being at supper at a particular time, I might say, well, I'll be home at 6:30. And invariably my wife learned, whatever he says, you got to at least add a half an hour to. So I was not good in that regard. And sadly, the people that suffered most were my family. Too often I ended up choosing work. Work became kind of a bigger priority. And that, God forgive me for that one.
Yep. Who else? You ever made a promise that you failed to deliver on that sticks in your mind? I guess I'm kind of like you, David. I tend to be overly optimistic, and I do that all the time, on time and everything. It's just, I can get one more thing done. I can get this done. I want to talk to them, and I just want to. And I am so guilty of that. Anybody else have one? Seeing none. All of you live up to your promises. That's what
Amen.
it is.
No, that what I can think about it, working with computers. Every now and then I'll tell somebody that I can do something on the computer, and then the computer didn't let me do it. I try my hardest to get it to fix or do it, and it doesn't happen. I said, ugh.
Yeah. And it's frustrating, isn't it, for you when you made that promise? And it's probably frustrating for the people you made the promise to, right? I just got a different vehicle. I got a car. It was a used vehicle, and the dealership had promised to do several things. Finally, we'd come to, okay, you'll do this, 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 and this. You're not going to do this, this, and this. Okay, do this. Well, they didn't do this and this and this. And it was just so frustrating. They promised, yep, we'll have that done. I get there and it's not done. And I said, well, I've got a couple hours. Can I bring it by? Can you squeeze it in? Can you get that? Oh, absolutely. So yesterday I took it by. I couldn't get it done. I sat there for an hour and a half and they hadn't even started on it. I said, sorry, it's so frustrating when we make promises and can't live up to them. And I wonder what Jesus thought when others made these promises. Yeah, we're going to stick with you, Jesus. And then ultimately they did not. So let's take a look at Peter's denial here from Matthew 26. If somebody can see that, be able to read that right here. Is that big enough?
Got it. Yep.
Yep.
That's perfect.
Go.
Truly, I tell you, Jesus answered, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. But Peter declared, even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. And all the other disciples said the same.
Yeah, right, huh? I will never disown you. And we know what he did. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Said, I do not know this man. Each time a little bit more agitated. And remember, the stories of the people in the Bible are our stories. And don't we sometimes maybe do the same thing? Maybe not explicitly, but sometimes just by even omission or not raising something up when we probably could or should raise it up, or talk about Jesus' love to somebody. In essence, we're denying Jesus by not raising that, by not doing that. Any thoughts on that?
I've always thought that Peter sort of got painted into a corner here. He loves his Lord. He loves Jesus, and and he sees these priests and everything killing Jesus, so he's got to be afraid of what's going on, and maybe he thought, well, I need to carry on the ministry, but if I really speak out for him, I might get killed. And that just seems to, keep me from blaming him from being wrong here.
He's human just like us. If we were in his shoes, would we probably not have done the same thing? You've got these Roman authorities who are, they're tough. They are mean. They know how to kill people. They know how to keep the order. And if you get out of line, they want you in here and you're over here, they can squelch that rebellion right like that. So yeah, he probably was very fearful. But I think about Peter and I think about the changes in his life, the transformations, the all of a sudden, boom. Think about his life before being a disciple. What was he doing?
Fishing. Yeah.
He was just out fishing. And Jesus says, come, follow me. He says, yep, okay, here I go. Boom, just like that. So now we see his human side when he denies Jesus. And then what happens in Acts? All of a sudden, when the day of Pentecost comes, the Holy Spirit, what does he do?
He gets bold again.
Sermon.
He finds words. He all of a sudden becomes this great orator, and he's out preaching the good news. It's like he's changed again. He's not afraid anymore. He is bold. So, we are Peter. sometime maybe along the way in your life, God has called you to something that all of a sudden you just jumped into, and you wonder, why did I do that? Maybe that Holy Spirit was working in you. And then somewhere along the way, maybe multiple times during our lives, we kind of venture off and either fall away or we deny Jesus. And then the Holy Spirit somehow comes in again and works in us and through us. The whole time we're being human. We are human, and we sin, just like Peter did. Let's take a look. What was the longest night of your life? Maybe any of these? The birth of a child, waiting up for your teenager, making a major decision the night before a big test, or maybe Christmas Eve as a kid. What was the longest night of your life?
All
Any
of the
those?
above.
All of them. Any of those jump out for you, Kathy? What was the longest night of your life?
Well, our daughter just had her first child, and during this COVID-19, and of course I couldn't be at the hospital. So she went in on a Tuesday night around supper time. They induced her, and the baby wasn't born until the next night at 11:30 p.m. So that, just praying for her and that baby, that everything would be okay. That was probably one of the longest.
Absolutely. That was a long night.
Yeah.
See, how about you, Xenia? What was the longest night? And I'm pronouncing it correctly, right? Xenia?
Yes.
Yeah. What was the longest night of your
Staying
life?
inside for the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm. Those nights are long. The days are long. They turn into months, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Thank goodness for this capability and for Zoom to be together even when we're not together.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Evelyn? What was the longest night of your life?
Well, I've had some, but probably I'm thinking the one that I never did actually sleep at all is in 1961, my dad had gone to Sweden on a trip with a group, and he was supposed to, we lived about 50 miles away in Worcester, Massachusetts, and my mother and I went to Boston, and we were spending the night, we were with my uncle that lived outside of Boston, and we were going to go get him at the airport in the evening. Well, his plane didn't come in. There was some problem. His plane didn't come in until the next morning, so we went back to my uncle's place and probably played cards all night. I don't think I slept at all that night. And then finally, my dad arrived in the morning, and then I had to drive all the way back to Worcester. My mother didn't drive a car, and I was probably 16 at the time or 17, and I was tired. Without any sleep the whole night, then I have to drive back home. But he made everything was all right, but probably that's the one night I probably never did sleep at all.
Yeah, that you remember. Elizabeth, how about you? Do you have a recollection of the longest night of your life?
Yeah, I did, but mine was when my father was in the hospital, and it was shortly before he passed away that he had some distress and was put on a ventilator. So my mother was very worried. So it was spending some time for the both of us together and praying for him.
Oh, yeah. And there are those nights that are so long, that are so difficult, and nights that are long because we're anticipating something great. It's like both extremes, right?
Yeah.
Either end. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else have one? I remember long nights before a test. There was a time that maybe some of you can relate to this, that I could do an all-nighter and stay up and cram before a test. And sometimes those nights just seemed so long because I had so much more material to get through, and I was trying to shove it in as hard as I could and make it stick. And I remember getting to the point that I said, I can't do this. I said, I have done my last all-nighter in my life. I cannot do this anymore.
Did you ever take a no-dose?
No.
The kids at my school used to take no-dos, and I never took one. And I mean, I would like, go to bed at 2 and set my alarm for 4 or something. I always had, a couple hours of sleep,
Mhm.
before a test. But a lot of the others did take a no-dos, and I don't know if that's still around, but
I don't know. Now it's called Red Bull.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
Yeah, it's still
I
around.
never did completely stay up all night, but I had maybe a couple of hours of sleep.
Yeah. Well, there was a long night in Jesus' life. All right. Somebody want to read that verse here in Matthew, verse 36.
Then
Right
Jesus
there.
went. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray."
Remember what happened then? He sat there, he went out to the garden to pray. Then what happened? Anybody remember what he did?
They all fell asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They all, you sit here and I'll go pray. And he comes back and they're, they're all zonked out. And can't you even stay awake? He said, I'm going to go back out and pray. All right. So he figures, surely now, after being admonished, a little bit, they fell asleep while he's out praying, they'll be awake. He comes back, sure enough. Not once, not twice, but just like Peter's denial, 3 times they fell asleep. They didn't have no-dos or Red Bull back then. So they were just falling asleep, and Jesus comes back and says, can't you even stay awake just for that little bit? Their story is our story. Can't we be faithful? You know how much we struggle, to get even volunteers for our 24-hour prayer vigil to stay up all night. I mean, it's just, we are just like the disciples. We get tired. We think about ourselves. That's who we are. I'm not making excuses. It's just a reality. We are just like the disciples. It's the same thing. How did your favorite adventure hero respond to danger? Think of your favorite adventure hero. How did they respond to danger? Can you remember? When there's danger that came, what did they do, Ed?
Boldness. They showed boldness.
Do you have a favorite superhero besides Christy?
She's sitting beside me.
Good answer.
Excellent say.
Smart man.
Boldness. Who else? Do you have a favorite superhero, and how'd they respond to danger?
I grew up on Superman, so of course Superman had to get in his costume before he could. He had to change his identity before he could become Superman. So, but I guess that was really for others. He'd have been Superman all the time if he'd have stayed in his Superman suit or whatever. So, yeah.
That makes me wonder, do we sometimes put on a different suit or change our identity when we are in different settings? Or is our faith the same and our response the same in every setting? Do we have to put on our Christianity in different places, and then do we take it off sometimes when we go in different places?
I guess St. Paul gave us an out, though. As he said, I can become all things to all people, I think, in that. But I think even though he did that, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that he, in becoming all things to all people, he remained true to Christ. It was more, I'll change my identity and the way I interact with people, but always with the idea that it's the best way to share Christ with them. I'm going to become like them so I can better share Christ with them. So it's a little bit of it's different than being not true to yourself or being true to Christ. He was always those things. He morphed played to his audience in that sense.
We just watched, you know how some movies kind of go the circuit and they're on forever? You flip the channels and they're on every channel for like a month. You see the same movie before it gets tired. And they said, so Wonder Woman has been that movie like for the last month. I'm flipping it. Oh, there's Wonder Woman again. Like what? Like it used to be past episodes of Law and Order. You could find every other channel some episode of Law and Order where Wonder Woman has been the movie.
Yeah.
So I watched it again, and I can watch a movie over and over because they're always brand new. I can watch a movie and forget everything in the movie. So it's great. So I flip there. Oh, let's watch this one. Sherry says, we've already seen that one. I go, yes, so. In any case, Wonder Woman, when she's approached with danger, so how many times she got angry at the injustice that was being done. And I remember just getting fiery angry and taking out her whip so that she could, her magical whip, so that she could deal with that. So sometimes when danger comes, we get angry and we take out our whip. Sometimes we have to change our clothes. Sometimes we have to call on Robin. I think of remember the old TV show Lost in Space on the robot, and he would go, danger, Will Robinson, danger, Will Robinson. Whenever I hear danger, I think of that. I think of that. Think of that show. Isn't that something? All right, let's take a look. Let's see what happened here. The betrayal. Oops, wait a minute. I got a screen that popped up and I don't know how to get rid of it. Get out of there. There we go. Now we're set. Now we're going to look at Matthew 26, starting at 50b. Let me scroll that up just a little bit. There we go. Somebody want to read that one for us? Evelyn, can you see it?
Is it then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested
That's
him?
it. That's
With
it.
that, one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Put your sword back in its place, Jesus said to him. For all who draw the sword will die by the sword.
So they were already, all the companions were ready to reach out and protect him at that moment. Finally, they said, now we're going to take our stand. And Jesus says, no, put your swords away. If you live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. Why do you suppose he reacted that way? Instead of letting them defend him.
I'm thinking maybe Jesus was thinking that, I think it was Peter that drew his sword. Peter was using that offensively against him, and he didn't want him offending someone because of him, as opposed to being defensive. So that's walking a tight line there, and I question that sometimes.
Yep. Why not do that? David, you were going to say something.
Well, just at this point, Jesus was on the bigger mission. He had come to grips in the Father. We're of like mind. The mission was the cross, and so we don't need distractions. We've got to stay focused on the.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. This is the. Go ahead, Zenia. Yep.
We got to stay watchful day and night.
Yep. Stand watch. We do, and yet when they started to take up his defense, he says, "No, just calm down, put it away." Wonder why else he might have done that.
This is Elizabeth. I was thinking, one, certainly he knew the mission and what was to unfold, but also an example of nonviolence. Jesus is continuing to, to give examples of how he wants people to, interact with each other. And so using the sword is not maybe, something that he would want to promote.
Yeah, absolutely. Promoting nonviolence. And Jesus knew what he had to do. Jesus knew why he was here. See, that was the track, the message that I did today for the kids VBS that I recorded was out by a railroad track. And I pointed to the track many times, talking about Jesus being on this track. He knew the track on which he had to run. He knew where he was headed. So he jumped on the track, and people who tried to knock him off the track, he generally said, no, let me keep going. Put your swords away. He knew this is what he had to do, and he had to keep going on that track. Tell you what, this is the time in VBS when we do arts and crafts. Does everybody have access to a piece of paper? Just any size, any shape, a piece of paper. Grab a piece of paper that you don't mind disposing of or doing something with. I got to grab one right over here.
Mike, you gotta do your. Mm-hmm.
Any kind. Now we're going to see who the true artists are. And Elizabeth, you can brag about yours, how good it is, because we can't see. All right, you got your piece of paper? Everybody find one? All right, now we're going to tear this and make a cross out of it. See if you can tear out and have a cross remaining. So in other words, see if I can do it. Let's start tearing it out so that we have a cross.
We're gonna make a cross.
That's left. See how we do this. Does this take you back to days of vacation Bible school? Who was do you have a teacher that you remember from Bible school? I remember Madeline West. She was the wife of one of the pastors. There were 3 churches that always got together. And Reverend Parker West's wife was Madeline West. And oh my goodness, she was crazy. She was a nut. She was so much fun. And we always looked forward to being in 5th grade, and we'd have Mrs. West as our teacher. And it was just always so much fun. So when we do fun things like this, it always takes me back to those great memories. And of course, the cookie ladies, not being sexist, but they were always ladies. We had the cookie ladies. You're also serious. All right, David, excellent. Elizabeth, you're working too hard at it. Kathy looks great.
It takes concentration, but I got it.
You got it?
I got it.
All right. Everybody have a cross?
Oh, man. Hold up. I'll tell you right.
There we go.
Well,
there it
it's
is.
supposed to
All
be
right.
a Greek cross.
I like it.
Because I started out holding the paper, sideways. So I thought about
Somebody,
the
why
Greek
you
cross, and then, but
Well,
it's not
that's
even.
perfect. That's perfect. That's perfect. Christy, everybody's got theirs. All right.
Oh my.
Ed, you're the last holdout. You're working too hard at it, man.
Mine is the worst
He's
one.
cheating. He's using a knife.
No, I like the Greek cross. Yeah, well,
Yeah,
that's-
but the arms are not equal.
yeah.
Ain't too bad.
Okay. All right. That's step 1. So you just hang on to your crosses. We're going to come. There you go.
Oh,
Ed's got
wow.
it. Now
Oh,
look at them.
here, somebody.
Yeah.
Ed cheated. Ed, you're too perfect.
It looks like Ed and Christy used scissors.
Look at the scissors.
Ed used a knife. I did not use anything but my fingers.
Okay.
Well, some of these crosses look kind of rugged, don't they? And that's okay, because that's exactly what Jesus' life was at the end. It was a rugged situation. He was on a rugged track toward crucifixion. And he knew that's the track that he had to stay on to get there for all of us, for our purpose. So hang on to your cross. We're going to come back to that just a little bit later. Well done, everybody. Good. And if you want to get out colors and paint and crayons and glue, you can add to it later after this. How about that? All right. Here's the next question. Have you ever been in a court of law or in a situation where you felt unfairly treated or felt the judge violated your rights? Have you ever been in a court or any other situation where you felt unfairly treated, or felt that your rights were violated? Anybody have a moment or a time you can share? Ed, you've got one of those?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, but I'd really not share it because it was a very bad situation, and
Got
anyway, it's I
It
still
jumped
suffer
out.
from it.
It's right there. You didn't hesitate to remember that, did you? Yeah. David, how about you?
Well, of course, it would have had to involve speeding.
Right.
And in my college years, I had a little nice little MGB, and the police officer thought my MGB in my college town was going too fast, and so I decided I would go to court, complete with drawings of the incident and where he supposedly clocked me and all this kind of thing. Interestingly enough, the only unfairness part came was when we got to court. His testimony was that he was he clocked me by being right behind me, and the only time he could have been right behind me was for the length of a small bridge, and I tried to contest that, but the officer's testimony was better than mine. So, long story short, but
It outweighed yours.
for a moment, I felt I was treated unfairly, but hey,
Yeah,
it was a good learning experience for a young
Yeah.
college student.
got it. Anybody else have a recollection of the time you were treated unfairly? Lots of them. We had one. We were driving back one time. Go ahead. Oh, hi there. How are you?
Right.
Were you having fun in Bible school?
Yeah.
Good. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
You got such a nice smile. Well, we had a time once we were driving back from Charleston, and Sherry was driving. And you know, just right down here at Rock Hill, when you're coming back in towards Charlotte, where the speed limit drops from what, 70 down to 60 or something like that, right at Rock Hill. So she was driving, and just as I look up, I'm sitting in the passenger seat, I said, remember the speed limit, and I didn't even get the words out of my mouth, and I saw right there was sitting a state highway patrolman. And as I finished the statement, remember the speed limit drops, she hit the brakes. Well, of course, as she went past the patrolman, he saw the brake lights and saw the car plowing, like this. And she was just doing a little bit over 70, maybe 79. But she was over 70, but there were two cars in the lane just to our left that flew past us at that exact moment, and they had to be doing 90 miles an hour at least, maybe 95. So I'm sure the police officer was, I don't know, whatever he was doing, looking down, and when his radar or whatever went off, he looked up and he saw our brake lights and saw our car plowing, and he said, "You were doing 90." And we said, "No, officer, that was the other people." And he insisted, and he was adamant, "I am not going to hold court along the side of the road here." And that's the one that came to my mind. So there are times that we probably all feel we've been treated unfairly somewhere along the way. Well, of course, Jesus was no different in his situation. He was treated very unfairly when he went to court. So we're going to take a look at Jesus before the high priest. Somebody want to read these verses here, starting right there? Can somebody see it?
Got to get unmuted. There we go. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death. The high priest said to him, I charge you under oath by the living God, tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God. You have said so, Jesus replied. But I say to all of you, from now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, He has spoken blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, now you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think? He is worthy of death, they answered.
And what was his crime? What was his crime? Being who he was. You know, it's just that you say that you are the living God, right? And Jesus says, well, you have said so. From now on, you're going to see the Son of Man, though, sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One, coming on clouds of heaven. Blasphemy, blasphemy. That's enough. That was just enough. They could twist that just enough to say, you're gonna die. Clearly, he was treated unfairly before the high priest and before Pilate.
So what is the sin there of the Sanhedrin? Bearing false witness? Or do you see as something different?
Well, what do you guys think? Well, the sin of the Sanhedrin, being human.
Was it hatred?
Probably that. They were trying to find, earlier in the chapter, it says they were trying to find people who could bring false witness against him, but they couldn't.
Yes. Yeah.
But they couldn't do it. They were trying to fix up charges. I mean, don't we see TV shows about that all the time, where you've got some crooked person trying to pin the deed on somebody else, or trying to find some evidence to incriminate somebody for some reason? That's just what was happening here. They were trying, because they didn't like him. They didn't like the story. He was rocking the boat, and they didn't want that to happen. We've got our thing going on here in the temple, and we're all good. And now you come along and you start. They didn't like it at all.
Maybe they were afraid that Jesus was going to take away some of their power.
That's exactly it. Most of the sins that we find in here are sins of selfishness. They're sins of selfishness. I have a friend in Rotary, guy that I've known for 20 years. Love him dearly. He's a sharp guy, successful businessman in Ballantyne. And we got to talking about the race relations and the race issues that are going on right now. And my friend Will just happens to be black. And he said a while back, and he and I have had some great discussions, as we have at church over the last few months as well, about all of this. And I'm so glad that we're having these conversations to really begin to understand each other's situation, because I don't think we really totally do. So I was talking with Will, and he said he was honored one time to be at dinner. They have a common friend with the bishop of the Episcopal Church, Michael Curry, I believe it is, isn't he the one that preached at Meghan and what's his name's wedding in England, Meghan Markle, and in any case, I think he was there, and I think he was the one that preached at that one.
Prince Harry.
And they happened, pardon?
Prince Harry.
Prince Harry.
Harry. There we go. So in any case, they were at dinner one time when he was here in Charlotte, and they got to talking about hatred. And he said, or about love. And he said, Jesus was talking and preached love all the time. He said, let me ask you this, in the context of the race relation thing, he said, what's the opposite of love? And if I ask you that, what would you say?
Hate.
I think indifference, or just not even noticing, or not even acknowledging.
Yeah. Well, when Will asked me that, he said, what would you say? I'd say hate. The opposite of love is hate. And he said, that's what most of us said, the three couples that were gathered there with the bishop. And he said, no, it's not hate. It's probably closer toward yours, Elizabeth. even more than indifference, it's selfishness. The opposite of love is selfishness. If we don't love the other, it's probably because we've got more love for ourselves than we could show to somebody else. It's selfishness. So I think a lot of the Sanhedrin and even Pontius Pilate, were exhibiting selfishness because they didn't want to deal with all the stuff that was going to come up. So we're going to fast forward just a little bit in the interest of time. Let's see if we can take a look. Matthew 26:74. Then he began to call down curses. This is Peter. And he swore to them, I don't know the man. Immediately a rooster crowed. Then Jesus remembered the word Jesus had spoken. Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. It's probably because he was feeling a little scared, a little selfish, concerned for his own safety, as we talked earlier. Yeah, a little selfishness was coming up. The opposite of love. Do you ever remember a time being in a wild crowd? Maybe at a rock concert, a football game, a protest march, public hearing, or maybe the dinner table with the family. Do you ever remember being in a wild crowd? A couple of you have a story to tell? Quick story?
I would,
No,
one
I
time years ago,
don't
you remember
have one.
when,
Oh, wait a minute. Let's go to Ed first, and then Evelyn.
okay,
I'm sorry.
okay.
No, that's all right.
Years ago, you remember when they had the first night things downtown in
Mhm.
Charlotte? I was in the square, and somehow this group of people gathered around a whole bunch of us and started pushing in to the extent that they were putting a fence around everybody and putting pressure. And we were all jammed in there together and like herded cattle. And if anybody had fallen, they would have been trampled on and probably killed.
Mm,
That was really scary. But I was able to get out.
I bet. Evelyn? Thanks, Ed.
I'm sorry. I thought you called on me. I don't really have one.
Oh, okay.
I don't have
Sorry.
one.
Anybody else have one? You remember being in a wild crowd? I went to an
This is
OSU. Oh, go ahead, Elizabeth.
Oh, I was up in New York City, I don't know, about 10 or 15 years ago, and there was a parade that was taking place there in Midtown that turned violent, and people were attacking people and whatnot. And I was actually up there for work, and I'd stayed over the weekend. And I remember I actually darted in the office building to get off the city streets to
yeah.
kind of see what was going on, to see how I could tell.
Yeah, it's a scary feeling, can be. Or,
Uh-huh.
or exciting at the same time, kind of exhilarating. I don't know. The one I thought of right away, a wild crowd, was when I went to an Ohio State football game a couple of times, and that could be a crazy time. Any of you ever been to Ohio State Stadium? Yeah, David, the other Ohioan here, huh?
And that's right.
Yeah, it's a fun, crazy time. All right, let's take a look. We just got a couple more. So we're going to fast forward. Jesus goes before Pilate. Whoop, it jumped. Jesus goes before Pilate, and Pilate's trying to figure this whole thing out and be diplomatic and keep his hands clean. And he turns to the crowd and says, what do you think? Barabbas or Jesus? And they said, crucify Jesus, crucify him. So Pilate says, I'm innocent. I'm innocent of this man's blood. It's your responsibility. And all the people said, his blood is on us and our children. And he releases Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. So he's sending Jesus over to be crucified. The crowd, we can overlay the words betray right there. As the people answered, his blood is on us and on our children. Betray. Right there. Remember, the people's story is our story. So You know, we can claim that responsibility just as much. And that had to affect a lot of people, that feeling of helplessness at his death. And then the crucifixion. Finally, when Jesus cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth, it's blocked out. And I got to move your pictures over. The earth shook, the rocks split, the tombs broke open, the bodies of many people who had died were raised to life. Oh my goodness. That had to be just an incredible time to have that happen. And then finally, the resurrection. We know that on the Sabbath, after the Sabbath, on that first day of the week, Mary Magdalene had gone to the tomb. And again, there was a violent earthquake. Can you imagine feeling that, the power, the strength, something's going on? And an angel came down from heaven. And going to the tomb, rolled the stone back and sat on it. It was like lightning. And the angel said to the woman, "Don't be afraid. I know you're looking for Jesus. He's not here. He has risen. Now go tell the disciples he has risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee." So the woman hurried away, and I'm paraphrasing, hurried away from the tomb and afraid yet filled with joy. Even though the angel says, "Don't be afraid. After all this, wouldn't you be afraid?" The tomb happens, this earthquake, the angel shows up, appearance like lightning. She's afraid. She runs with joy and she says, "Greetings, greetings." And Jesus said, then they all run to him. Jesus says again, "Don't be afraid. Tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." See, Jesus does all this for us. Now, if you've got a pen or pencil, take your cross. And I want you to write me right in the middle of it. Write me right in the middle of it. Jesus does all this for me, for you and for me and for all people. See, he was on that track because that's where he had to go. He knew what he had to do. He knew his course in life. His course was to go to die on the cross so that he could rise again for me and for you and for you and you and you, for each of us. All right, we're going to do one last song. See if I can make it happen. Let me tee it up here. Give me a second. Because in that blood, there is power. And share screen, full screen, and play. This is another moving song.
Would you do service for Jesus, your King?
Come on,
There's
man.
power in the blood, power in the blood. Would you live daily his
There you go.
praises to sing? There's wonderful power in the blood. There is power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Would you do service for Jesus, your King? There's power in the blood, power in the blood. Would you live daily his praises to sing? There's wonderful power in the blood. There is power, wonder-working power in the blood, of the Lamb. There is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood
And there we go. All right, fun stuff. Thanks everybody for a great time this morning. Let's close in a word of prayer, shall we? The Lord be with you.
And
Also,
also with you.
Also with you.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we come to you and give you thanks for this power that you have given us through Jesus Christ. For through the shedding of his blood and the giving of his life and his resurrection from the dead, you have promised us life. Let us stay faithfully on that track toward the ultimate gift that you have given us, life eternal with you. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you.
everybody
Thank
for
you,
hanging
Kenny.
out with me
Thank you.
this
Thanks,
morning.
Kenny.
Thanks, Kenny.
Who we got tomorrow?
Thank you.
Tomorrow, you've got one of the pastors.
Got Drew. Hey,
You got Pastor Drew tomorrow. All right, everybody. Have a
All right.
Thank
fun
you.
day.
Thank
All right.
Thank
See y'all
you.
soon.
Thank you.
Okay. All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
bye.